Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something that's, I think, super relevant to, well, everyone, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is risk management, but specifically for businesses.
Yeah.
And we've got a great article here to guide our discussion.
Yep.
Let me just quickly pull up the title here.
Okay.
Okay, so it's called Identifying the Risks Organizations Face Key Considerations for Risk Governance.
Catchy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Super catchy.
Yeah.
And it was published pretty recently, actually, just last month on October 11th, 2024,
Okay.
on the Continuous Improvement website.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that site.
Yeah, they've got some really great resources on there.
Yeah, they do.
So the article jumps right in, and it outlines 6 major categories of risk that businesses need to be aware of.
Okay, yeah, 6.
Yeah.
Makes you realize how much is out there, huh?
It really does.
Yeah.
So we've got strategic risk,
Okay.
operational risk,
Oh.
financial risk,
Yep.
compliance risk,
Right.
reputational risk, and IT risk.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think it's really helpful that the article breaks it down this way because it can be kind of overwhelming to think about all the different ways a business can, be exposed to risk.
It really can.
So let's start with strategic risk.
Sure.
I always kind of struggle with that one a little bit. Like, what exactly does that mean?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
It's the risk a company takes when they make big decisions about, like, the direction of the business.
Okay. Yeah. So like their overall strategy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
For example, like, let's say you have this screaming giant company.
Okay. I can picture that.
And they're like, hey, you know what? Let's invest a ton of money into a virtual reality platform.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a big bet.
It is. But what if VR doesn't become, as popular as they think it will?
Right. Then they've just sunk all this money into something that's not going to pay off.
Exactly. That's a strategic risk.
Wow. Okay. That's a much clearer way to think about it than just like a dictionary definition.
You got it.
Okay. So what about operational risk? Does that have something to do with like everyday operations going wrong?
It does. Imagine you've got this big manufacturing company
Okay.
and they need this super rare metal
Right.
for their products, right?
Mm-hmm.
But suddenly there's some kind of political turmoil in the region where they get this metal.
Oh, no.
And their entire supply chain gets totally disrupted.
Wow. Yeah. That would be a nightmare.
A total nightmare. Production stops, orders can't be filled, and revenue plummets.
Right. All because of something totally outside of their control.
Exactly. That's operational risk in a nutshell.
It really makes you realize how vulnerable businesses can be.
It does.
Okay. So financial risk, I feel like that one's maybe the most like obvious one, right? Like businesses losing money because of bad investments or something.
Right. It's a classic one. But financial risk can be more than just bad investment.
Okay.
It can be anything that messes with a company's financial stability, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, say a company has a lot invested in a foreign country,
Mm-hmm.
and then, bam, there's this huge currency devaluation.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Suddenly, all their assets are worth way less.
Yikes. That's scary.
It is. It shows that financial risk can pop up from some pretty unexpected places and have a huge impact.
Totally. It's funny because you mentioning that makes me think about my own life.
How so?
Well, like if I were to ever invest in, say, like a foreign bond or something, I'd have to think about those currency fluctuations, right?
Don't bet. And that's what I think is so cool about risk management. It's not just for these big companies, These principles, they apply to all of us.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to have to pick your brain about that a little later.
Sounds good.
But for now, let's get back to these categories.
Right.
Compliance risk. That one sounds pretty serious.
It is. And it's only getting trickier as time goes on.
Okay.
Think about data privacy, for example.
Yeah. Okay.
Companies, they're collecting all this data on their customers, right?
Oh, yeah, tons of it.
And if they don't handle it properly, they could face massive fines or even lawsuits.
Wow. Yeah.
Compliance risk is all about staying on the right side of the law.
So it's not just about ethics, it's about the actual legal stuff.
Exactly. Now, think of it as reputational risk.
Okay.
That one's probably more important now than ever before.
Yeah, with social media and everything.
Exactly. One viral tweet and a company's reputation can be destroyed.
It's crazy.
It is. But it's not just social media. Think about a company using unethical labor practices.
Right.
People find out about that, they're going to boycott them.
Totally.
Reputational damage, it's tough to recover from.
So it seems like all these categories are kind of linked together.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
Like a compliance issue could easily turn into a reputational nightmare.
Right, exactly. They all feed into each other.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's IT risk.
Yeah, that one feels especially relevant these days.
It really does.
Yeah.
With all the data breaches and cyber attacks,
It's scary.
it can be. The consequences can be huge. Like, think about a hospital getting hit with ransomware.
Oh, no.
Their whole system shuts down. Patients could be at risk.
It's not just about protecting data anymore. It's about protecting everything.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this pretty comprehensive picture now of all the different risks businesses face.
We do.
But, why does it even matter to identify all these risks? Like, what's the real benefit for businesses?
That's the million-dollar question.
Uh-huh.
Identifying risks, it's not just some theoretical exercise.
Okay.
It's about building a business that can weather any storm.
Okay. Yeah, so like making it more resilient.
Exactly. Think of it this way.
Okay.
If you know where the potholes are in the road, you're a lot less likely to drive into one, right?
That makes sense.
Risk identification, it's like having a road map that shows you the danger zones.
Oh, okay. I like that.
And the article, it goes on to say that this approach can lead to a bunch of benefits.
Okay, like what?
Like preventing financial loss, protecting their reputation, making sure they're following all the rules,
Right.
even improving their planning and how efficiently they operate.
All those things sound pretty important.
They are, and they all affect the company's bottom line, big time.
Okay, so let's break down a couple of those benefits.
Yeah.
Like preventing financial loss. I mean, obviously that's a good thing, but how does that actually work in practice?
Well, think about it this way. If a company knows that a supply chain disruption could happen, they might start looking for more suppliers, just in case.
Okay, so they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Or they might decide to build up their inventory, have some extra stuff on hand.
Okay.
That way, if something happens, they're prepared.
Right, they've got a backup plan.
Exactly. It's like having a backup plan for your whole business.
So it's not just about reacting to problems. It's about getting ahead of them.
Exactly. And that's where something called key risk indicators comes in.
Oh, what are those?
They're basically like early warning signals.
Okay.
They can alert a company to potential problems before they become huge disasters.
So it's like having a dashboard for your business that shows you all the important stuff.
You got it. And if you see something flashing red, you know it's time to take action.
I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Good. It's all about having a system in place.
Right.
You identify the risks, you monitor them, and then you have a plan to deal with them if they pop up.
Exactly. And the best part is that this can work for any business, big or small.
Really?
Absolutely. It's a framework that helps businesses become more adaptable and ultimately more successful.
I feel like I'm getting a crash course in risk management here.
Uh-huh. Well, you're a quick learner. But before we dive deeper into specific strategies and stuff, I want to loop back to something I mentioned before.
Oh, right. About how these principles apply to our personal lives, too.
Yeah, exactly. Because let's be real, we all face risks in our daily lives, whether we realize it or not. Oh, totally. Like from money stuff to career choices, relationships, even just walking down the street.
Exactly. There's risk everywhere. And while we might not have fancy dashboards and stuff,
Right.
we can still use these same principles to make better decisions.
Okay, I am definitely intrigued.
It's a game changer, trust me.
So let's dig into that more after the break, but for now, we've laid a good foundation by exploring the 6 major categories of risk that businesses face.
We have.
And why managing those risks is super important for success.
Absolutely. And we've even touched on some key concepts like KRIs and having a plan in place to deal with potential problems.
But there's so much more to explore.
Oh, yeah. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Stay tuned, everyone, because in part 2, we'll dive deeper into how these risk management principles apply to your personal life.
We'll even look at some real-world examples of companies that have successfully navigated major risks.
We'll be back soon to continue our exploration of the fascinating world of risk.
Can't wait.
Welcome back. Man, that last segment really got me thinking,
Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening.
It's amazing how much risk is just, built into the whole idea of running a business.
It really is. But
Yeah.
like we were saying before, this whole risk thing, it's not just for businesses.
Right. You mentioned that we can apply these same ideas to our personal lives, too.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of curious about that. Where do we even start with that?
Well, I think the first thing is just admitting that, risk is everywhere.
Okay. Yeah.
We tend to think about risk like it's just about money or business, but it's so much more than that.
So step 1 is opening our eyes to the fact that risk is just a part of life.
Exactly. Don't pretend it's not there. Once you
Okay.
see it, you can start to, deal with it.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, let's say you're making a big decision.
Okay.
like buying a house.
Oh, yeah, huge decision.
Right. Lots of things to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And from a risk management point of view, you'd want to think about, like, what could go wrong? Like, what if interest rates go way up? What if you lose your job? Things like that.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it that way before.
Yeah. It's not about being scared. It's about being realistic and prepared.
Right, so being prepared is key.
It is. And that's where assessing the risk comes in.
Okay.
Once you know what the risks are, you got to figure out, like, how likely are they to happen? And if they do, how bad would it be?
So it's about figuring out which risks are the most important to worry about.
Exactly. Some risks are worth taking. Others you definitely want to avoid.
Right.
It's about, like, weighing the good and the bad before you jump in.
This reminds me of something we talked about earlier, that risk-reward thing.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes taking a risk can lead to good things.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, like, starting a business.
Okay.
It's risky, but if it works out, it can be amazing.
Right.
Or investing in the stock market,
Yeah.
There's always the chance of losing money, but you could also make a lot.
True. So it's not just about avoiding risk completely.
No, it's about managing it.
Right. Like, kind of like wearing a seatbelt when you drive.
Uh-huh. I like that. You're not avoiding driving, you're just taking a precaution.
Exactly.
It's the same idea with personal risks.
Okay. So we've got being aware of the risks, assessing them, and then finding ways to manage them. What's the last step?
Oh, reviewing everything.
Reviewing.
Yeah, like going back and looking at your risk assessment,
Right.
Like, are the risks still the same? Have things changed?
Because things change all the time, right?
They do. The job market changes, the economy changes, our lives change.
So you got to stay on top of things.
You do. It's about staying ahead of the curve.
I'm starting to realize that we actually have a lot of control over the risks in our lives.
We do. It's
Yeah.
not just about luck. It's about making good choices.
That's actually pretty empowering.
It is. When you understand risk, you can feel more confident about the future.
I like that.
Me too.
This has been really eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new way of looking at things now.
Glad to hear it.
But before we move on, I'd love to hear a real-life example of how someone might use all this.
Sure. Let's say someone wants to change careers.
Okay.
They've been in a stable job for a long time, but they're not happy.
Right.
They've always wanted to start their own business, but they're worried about the risks.
Okay, yeah, that's a big risk.
It is. So first, they got to admit that the risk is there.
Okay.
Then think about what could go wrong. Like, what if the business fails? What happens to their finances?
Right, they got to think about the worst-case scenario.
Exactly.
So they've identified the risks. What's next?
Now they got to assess them, do their research, look at their money situation, and be honest about their skills.
Okay, so being honest with yourself is important.
Very important.
And once they've done all that.
Then they can start figuring out how to manage the risks.
Okay.
Like, maybe they start the business part-time while they still have their other job.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. Or maybe they take a class to learn more about running a business.
Yeah. Or find a mentor who's done it before.
Exactly. All these things can help reduce the risk.
So it's not about just blindly going for it.
Nope. It's about being strategic.
Okay, and what about that last step, reviewing?
Oh, right. So as their business grows, they need to keep checking in on things.
Okay.
Are the risks still the same? Do they need to change their plans?
So it's like an ongoing process.
It is. It's about constantly learning and adapting.
That's a really great example. It shows how all of this can actually be used in real life.
Exactly. It's all about taking control and making good decisions.
I like that.
Me too.
This whole conversation has been so insightful. I feel like I have a whole new framework for thinking about decisions.
I'm glad to hear that.
But I think it's time to, zoom out a little bit.
Zoom out.
Yeah, we've talked about business risk and personal risk.
Right.
Now I think it's time to go global.
Oh, wow. Going global.
We've got one more part to this deep dive, and in that part, we're going to explore the risks that could shape the future of, everything, really.
I'm intrigued.
Stay tuned, everyone, because in part 3, things are going to get really interesting. All right, welcome back to the show. We've been talking all about risk.
We have.
From businesses to our own personal lives. And now, like we promised, it's time to zoom out.
Time for the big picture.
Exactly. The global stuff.
Right. The risks that could, shape the future of, pretty much everything.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little, intimidated by this part. Haha. It's a lot.
It is big. But you remember how we were talking about, how everything's connected?
Oh, yeah. With the risks?
Right. Like how one thing can cause a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that, but on a global level now.
So like things that could disrupt not just one company, but like whole countries.
Exactly. Or even, the entire planet.
Wow. Okay, yeah, now I'm getting nervous.
No need to be nervous.
Yeah.
Let's take climate change as an example.
Okay, yeah, everyone's talking about that.
Right. The article we've been looking at, it doesn't go too deep into climate change,
Oh.
but it's a really good example of what we're talking about here.
A global risk.
A global risk, yeah.
I mean, we all hear about the environmental impacts, but how does that connect to, like, risk management?
Well, think about it. It's not just about the weather.
Okay, yeah, there's more to it.
Climate change, it can mess with how we grow food.
Oh, right, yeah.
It can force people to move because their homes aren't safe anymore.
Makes sense.
And it can even make political problems worse, like between countries.
So it's like a domino effect.
It is. It's a risk multiplier.
A risk multiplier.
It takes existing risks and it makes them even bigger.
Oh, I see.
And then on top of that, you've got like geopolitical risks,
Mm-hmm.
wars, terrorism, unstable governments, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, those are scary too.
They are. Those things can mess up global trade, cause huge humanitarian crises, even make people lose trust in, their leaders and institutions.
Right, like we saw with that conflict a while back, how it affected the whole world's economy.
Exactly. And it reminds us how connected we all are, What happens in one place, it can affect everyone.
Okay, so we've got climate change, we've got geopolitical risks. What else is there?
Well, technology.
Technology.
Yeah, all the new tech stuff like artificial intelligence, biotechnology.
Oh, right. Yeah, those are changing so fast.
They are, and that's part of the risk.
How so?
Well, these technologies, they could do amazing things, but only if we're careful
Careful about what?
about how we develop them, how we use them. Otherwise, there could be unintended consequences.
Right, like people are already worried about AI becoming biased or taking away jobs.
Exactly. And even, the possibility of autonomous weapons like killer robots. It sounds like science fiction, but it's something we need to be thinking about.
That's kind of terrifying, to be honest.
It can be, but it all goes back to what we've been talking about, right?
Risk management.
Yeah. We need to be thinking ahead, anticipating the potential problems, and figuring out ways to prevent them.
It feels like we're talking about a whole different level of risk here, like not just avoiding a pothole, but like surviving an earthquake.
Yeah, kind of. But that's exactly why we need to talk about this stuff. We can't just ignore it and hope it goes away.
So what can we do? It all seems so huge and complicated.
Well, the first step is always awareness,
Yeah.
right? Learning about these risks, understanding what could happen, and talking about it with other people.
Okay, so we need to educate ourselves.
Exactly. And then we need to move past the fear and start thinking about solutions.
So we're not completely powerless.
We're not. We can support policies that help protect the environment, we can push for peaceful solutions to conflicts, and we can demand that new technologies are developed ethically. We can make our voices heard.
It's like a call to action, right? We all have a responsibility to help shape the future.
Exactly. And that brings us back to something we've talked about a lot today, the idea of a risk-aware culture.
But now we're talking about a global risk-aware culture.
We are. It's about creating a world where people are aware of the risks, where they make smart decisions, and where they think about the long-term consequences of their actions.
And realizing that we're all in this together.
Absolutely. We're all connected, and the solutions to these global problems, they're going to require everyone working together.
That's a good point.
It is.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of risk. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We started with the risks that businesses face, then looked at how those same principles apply to our own lives, and then zoomed all the way out to talk about global risks.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, and I think the biggest takeaway for me is that risk is just a part of life.
It is.
It's not always a bad thing, and if we're smart about it, we can actually use risk to our advantage.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, to everyone listening out there, as you go about your day, think about the risks you encounter, big and small.
Yeah.
What can you learn from them?
Yeah.
How can you use that knowledge to make better decisions?
Great questions. And how can you help create a better, more resilient future for yourself and for everyone else?
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of risk.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we'll see you next time.